Yo, what is up guys? Welcome back, welcome to the channel as usual. I know that a lot of you have been anticipating this guide as I've gotten a lot of people asking me to make this over on Twitch multiple times, but I didn't want to make like something half-baked. So I obviously wanted to invest more time into experimenting before I roll out something for you guys. Now do keep in mind still that Spear has not been out for too long, so there is always room for improvement, for tweaking, for different play styles. So definitely don't take this as a copy paste, but take this as more of my personal play style and kind of like a basis to start with so that you can start improving from there. Now in this guide, I'm going to be covering both PvE and PvP, and also like I've been experimenting with multiple different builds, and this is like basically what I have settled with for now. And I'll be leaving the links down in the comments. I'm going to have the link pinned for you guys for my Twitch channel if you want to come hang out, ask questions, see tweaks that I do on the spot if there is any. And at the same time, I'm going to also leave the link in the comment section for my quest log so that you can see the different changes whenever I apply them there as well. Now, starting with the actual build of this. Now, do keep in mind that this is mostly tailored towards like something that was easier for me to achieve. Obviously, this is not the final build. You'll see the final build that I'm aiming for in the quest log link that I'm going to be leaving down there. And keep in mind that this cape is only for PvE. I don't use this for PvP. So just to be very clear about this. This is not necessarily the absolute best, but this is like something that I'm very happy with and I've been dealing a lot of damage with. Keep in mind the survivability is a little low-ish depending on how you play, depending on if you have a healer on you, stuff like that. So in general for tier 2, I plan to experiment with something more bruiser-like than something burst-like, as I feel like Spear will benefit more from that. I could be totally wrong, but regardless, this is what I am running as of right now. In terms of stats for PvE, honestly, like do whatever you want. I'm running 32 wisdom just to make sure that my mana is not too problematic, and obviously 50 strength and 50 dexterity. You need 50 strength. You don't necessarily need 50 dexterity depending on how much your crit is, because you do need high crit for this build. If your crit is like already about 1k, even without the 50, you can lower it, but if it's like 1k with the 50, you need to keep it at 50. Realistically, for the end build, I would want my perception to be at 40, as buff duration is really good for this build as well. Now, this is in terms of PvE, and we're going to be touching on PvP in a moment. So let's start with a single target build. This is something that I run whenever I do, let's say, co-op dungeons, dimensional trials, or obviously if I do Gate of Infinity as well. So this is essentially what I'm using. I've experimented with a lot of things. I've tried Lightning Infusion, for example. I've tried with Poison. I've tried like so many different stuff when it comes to this. And this is basically what I'm happy with, which I'm going to be leaving in the quest log section. Do be aware that this skill here is going to kind of like ruin the rotation a bit because it's an AoE. So I'm going to refrain from using it on the dummies for now. But generally, when you use it on a boss, it doesn't matter. It's one target. So this will only target that one target in front of you. But here, if I use this right now, it will be like all over the place. So just be aware that it's a part of the rotation. But I'm not going to be using it for the sake of not messing up the whole rotation right now. So essentially, your rotation is something as Inject Venom and then your Umbral Spirit. And Umbral Spirit, the way I am running it, is I'm taking the additional damage increase for poison attacks because it also enhances the damage, and overall, like, this is actually like a really good thing. Keep in mind that you need the daggers out at all times, as it's a way better attack speed compared to the spear. The spear has very slow attack speed in comparison, so I recommend having the daggers out at all times. In terms of mastery, before we go into the rotation, this is what I'm running, but if you don't plan on PvPing at all, you should fill up the bottom row. And then it's up to you what you do. Like, preferably you could go like to weaken chance, maybe even to buff duration, and then to mana cost efficiency or cooldown speed. Up to you. You don't need evasion for PvE necessarily, so you can do whatever you see fit. But for now, this is what I'm running. For PvE on Spear, I'm running this right now. But if you are not going to PvP at all, you should focus on Destroy first, and then maybe go face off after. But because I'm doing a lot of PvP, I'm going face off first, and then I'll go destroy after. Now, in terms of the rotation, I use Inject Venom into Umbral Spirit. Then I dash because that gives me attack speed. So this skill over here, when you dash, you just get attack speed, which is pretty good. So essentially, I use this into the dash, into the Unyielding Sentinel, which also you could use before the dash. This gives you heavy attack chance. And then straight up follow up with Phoenix Barrage, which deals insane amount of damage. So it's going to look something like this. And just like that, this is already like a lot of ticks and a lot of damage because Phoenix Barrage is basically like your bread and butter. After you're done with this, you're going to follow up with your Explosive Fury and then straight into Flaming Arc. And then after you're done, you're going to follow with Slaughtering Slash. I'm not going to use it right now, as I mentioned, because of the dummies. But the reason you do all of those first is because this one over here deals more damage per stack. So you want to stack everything as much as you can first before you use this. And when I say everything, I mean Ember or Ignition, whatever you want to call it. So Inject Venom into this, into the dash, and then follow up with this. You can follow up with this if you want as well, and then follow up with Explosive Fury. And then after you're done, you follow up with Slaughtering Slash. You can put Fatal Stigma first if you want, and then Slaughtering Slash into Brutal Incision. Keep in mind, Javelin Inferno in this build is more of a filler, because normally in dungeons, you don't have long cooldowns if you have a bow with a mark, because that lowers your cooldown tremendously. But if you're doing like a solo dungeon, like the secret dungeons or whatever it may be, then you are most of the time having long cooldowns, and this serves as a good filler in between until your cooldowns come up, and it does decent damage as well. It's better though to use on multiple targets, as that gives you the maximum amount of damage, but regardless, it doesn't really matter that much. It's just like a filler in this rotation, so don't use it until everything is on cooldown. Once again, the rotation is as follows: Inject Venom into Umbral Spirit, into Unyielding Sentinel, you dash, you use your Phoenix, you use your Explosive Fury, and then you use your Flaming Arc into Slaughtering Slash, and then you can put Fatal Stigma in between if you want, even before the Slaughtering Slash, and then finish off with your Brutal Incision, and then repeat. Cleaving Moonlight is good also as a filler in between, whenever everything is on cooldown, and same goes for Javelin, and those are going to be the skills you use when your cooldowns are not up, as that will help fill up the gap and deal also decent amount of damage as well. Just make sure to have your poison up at all times if possible, as it will empower your Cleaving Moonlight, and it will also empower your Umbral Spirit, as I'm taking those in the build for the poison so that it deals more damage. You can either take the attack speed if you want, or if you feel like it's not giving you much benefits, you can take the poison. It's up to you. Both are fine. I've experimented with both, and both yielded pretty much like the same results or very similar results. So it's up to you what you want to do with this. Now, in terms of AoE grind, this is my absolute favorite build out of all the builds, as it has insane sustain, insane AoE damage. You basically are like unkillable. You have insane amount of life steal because of this skill over here, Blood Leech Aura, with the skill spec effect boost, and also your mana has absolutely no issues, and your AoE is just insane. All you need to know about this rotation is actually like about maybe 3 things. Just make sure to sustain Lightning Infusion and Thunder Spirit at all times, because this gives you a decent amount of AoE. Make sure you have Blood Leech Aura up before you start doing the burst, because it sustains your HP. And outside of that, make sure to initiate with Explosive Fury so that you can start using Javelin Inferno as fast as possible, as it's insane amount of AoE. And then after that, it's up to you what you want to do or what you want to fill up with. You have like Slaughtering Slash, you have Phoenix Barrage to kind of like finish whatever is left. It's like very, very good amount of AoE. It looks something like this. So let's say I'm going to be pulling these over here. Let's take these mobs as well. And then let's take these over here. So it should look something like this. Make sure to block. And then you start using your slashes. And then Javelin is basically like your massive AoE. That will basically like kill everything pretty easily. And then the rest is like up to you what you do with it. Just make sure to use Javelin when there are multiple targets, as it deals a lot of damage. But as you can see, single target is not too hot overall. So essentially, as you can see, I finished these. I'm still full HP. You can feel free to pull more. Let's say I'm going to be pulling this whole back over here just to showcase it one more time. Just be aware of the blocks and be aware of your Blood Leech Aura. Otherwise, you'll be taking disgusting amount of damage. So let's say I'm going to be pulling these over here. And then you're going to do this. Then you can just start using this into Javelin right away. And as you can see, the amount of AoE is just insane. And then you can also use Phoenix. I cancelled it there by mistake, but it's fine. And as you can see, this is a whole pack gun. You're still full HP. You're still full mana. Pretty damn easy. So this is like a build that I'm honestly very happy with. And especially with food buffs and things like that, you will just have a much easier time grinding as well. So now let's talk PvP. PvP is obviously something that a lot of people are curious about, and how to play Spear Dagger in PvP. Let's start with the small scale. Small scale, honestly, is very straightforward. You are absolutely bursty. Think of Greatsword Dagger, kind of like more fast-paced with a lot more burst and AoE on top of it if needed. And this is essentially what I'm running personally. I know that Javelin is pretty good, but honestly in small scale, depends on what small scale you're doing. You could take Inferno Javelin. So if, let's say, small scale, you consider it Boon or Rift. To me, I would take Javelin in there. But if you consider Arena small scale, for example, I wouldn't take Javelin, as usually they're split, and even if they're not, you don't really need Javelin for 3 people. But overall, this is what I'm running personally. In terms of stats, I have higher perception for the extra hit. End game build is going to look a little different because I'm going to be swapping the ring in the future, maybe even the ring and the necklace here as well. Regardless though, everything is going to be left in the quest log in the comments. But overall, this is what I'm running. 962 melee hit is pretty damn good, honestly, in tier 1. Not many people are building insane amount of melee evasion anyway. So you will more often than not land your damage. Now, in terms of how to play this, the rotation is still pretty much still the same stuff when it comes to your bread and butter. You would want to use Lightning Infusion, and then use your Umbral Spirit, as this is very important for the insane amount of burst. Now, do keep in mind for the engage, I would recommend using Shadow Strike, or if they are blocking, you can use Wreak Havoc, as I am taking this skill spike over here, which basically essentially has a chance to stun them if they are using static defense, which is like standing still block. So it's up to you what you use. And the reason I take Shadow Strike is because this skill over here, which is your stun, is really risky, as it's not targeted skill. It's actually a skill that you use in the direction, and it's very small area as well. So more often than not, by the target simply moving, you would miss it. And that's why I prefer Shadow Strike to keep them in place. Now, keep in mind that this one is AoE. So if you have multiple targets standing in front of you, they will get stunned, granted that the chance obviously procs. So as usual, you're going to be using your bread and butter, Lightning Infusion, into Umbral Spirit, and then you're going to use Shadow Strike into the stun, follow up with Phoenix Barrage, that is disgusting amount of damage, and then Explosive Fury should finish them off mostly. If not, then you follow up with the rest of the skills that you have, whether it's like Rising Slash or Flaming Arc or whatever it may be. If things get risky, you can also use this skill for shield. Don't use it as an engage. I know the heavy attack is pretty tempting, but you need it for the shield. And if things get risky, you just camouflage and get out. So essentially, this is how it looks like. And then the rest is like up to you what you want to do. And then this normally finishes them off, or you can finish off with your Thunder Cloud Bombing. Outside of that, like this already should have finished them off. If not, you just like reposition, wait for your cooldowns, auto attack, whatever it may be, to finish them off. And that should already be more than enough. This is for the single target, pretty straightforward. Extremely bursty, and you can watch me play Arena over on Twitch, or you can review my VOD that I did last stream, and you will see a lot of PvP and arenas in there as well. Now, when it comes to mass PvP, that's where it gets a little tricky. Some people prefer playing more on the sideline, and some people prefer playing more on the offensive and get into the blob. Now, when it comes to getting into the blob, you need to be aware of a couple things. You need to make sure to have a healer on you because you're super squishy. You will die instantly. The fear is not as insane as you think it is. And Javelin is very, very, very important to use. Now, those are the things that you need to keep in mind, as this is essentially what you will use to kill a bunch of targets. And that's why you need to initiate with Explosive Fury the moment you get in, if possible. Or if the targets are, you see like a blob of targets that are low, you could use your invisibility, like walk up on them, Umbral Spirit, follow up with Phoenix Barrage on the targets that are low, and you can get a massive AoE and get them all down. This is also something you can do. I think playing sideline is more effective if you want kills, but also engaging can be really, really, really effective depending on your guild composition, your party composition, how they play around spears. In that case, I would say engages by spear can be really, really crucial to your guild. Essentially, death from above is obviously like the most important thing, even though you need to position accordingly, as it can be interrupted before it casts. But once you're in the air, you're fine. Nobody can target you or stun you or whatever, but it can be interrupted while charging, and it takes a long time to charge. Now, to keep in mind that the target also walks away, it stops the channeling, and then it goes on cooldown. So you need to make sure to use it in an appropriate time. Essentially, you go in and then you do the usual, but with the exception this time of using this first, and then Javelin to kind of like do this insane amount of AoE, which should take down a lot of targets. After you're done with this, you can finish people off if you want, dash to targets that are low, use your Wreak Havoc, whatever it may be, kind of like, you know, get things going. But obviously, if things are risky after you've done everything and you've done your javelin, and you feel like, okay, I've gotten a few kills, now it's getting risky for me, just invis and get the hell out, and then wait for your cooldowns and then repeat. Or maybe skirmish on the sidelines for now, because even with this build, you can still skirmish on the sidelines as you still have a lot of single target damage as well. This is like how I play this class in terms of like PvE, PvP. These are all my builds, which once again will be left in the comment section. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe and come hang out with us on Twitch, as it does help me out tremendously. And just be aware that once again, Spear has not been out for long. There is a playstyle of Burst, there is a playstyle of Ignition or Ember, and you need to experiment with both. I feel like Burst, the problem with it is that it's very resources hungry and you can't even keep it up because there aren't many skills that give you much burst, but it's up to you still. Try them out, figure it out on your own. Use this as a basis, not as the best build in the game, and go from there and let me know what you think. Thank you once again, and until the next one, peace.